Hi, this is Mark. As a few of you might know who will tune into this, I was in an accident with a dog attacked my dog while I was out walking, and in the process, I broke a shoulder, the proximal humerus to be exact, and it was simultaneously extremely painful and a bit revelatory. In the midst of all of this, in the hospital, the scripture came to me, scripture reference from Luke chapter 22, where Jesus says to Simon Peter, Simon, Simon, Satan has asked for you so that he may sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you. And when you return, I take that to mean when you come back to your senses, when you return, strengthen your brothers. It's a great verse. And but it came to mind while I was in agony in the emergency room. And it was agony. It was serious pain. It was really, really shocking. It even shocked my wife how bad it was. And so anyway, I'm making this video for that purpose. I am returned to my senses. And I'm going to claim this verse. Jesus has prayed for me. So I'm safe from the sifter. And so why am I making this? Well, I guess I've been interacting more and more with folks on channels, a group of channels. They're small channels for the most part, and they're all in orbit around a moderately sized channel by Reverend Paul Vanderklay. And they call themselves This Little Corner of the Internet, or just TLC for short. And as I interact with them, they're not any one denomination. They're not even any one religion. They're a big mix of people kinds of Christians who haven't traditionally gotten along very well in the past. But over time, for some reason, these are people. Some aren't even Christian. Some are so-called deconstructed Christians. I'm still learning what these terms mean. So I'm not sure exactly what that means. I guess that means some are reconstructed because they've come back. I guess deconstructed means they left the church and they come back. Or they left the church. They were Christians at one point, stopped being Christians. That was the deconstruction. And then they're re-engaging with folks like Paul because I guess they want to reconstruct or find a way back in. I've not been a consistent churchgoer myself over the years. I started out very, very serious and intense as a Christian in my adolescence after some profound experiences. The first profound experience I had, really shocking kind of experience, happened when I was maybe 10. I was riding in the car with my mom, and she and my dad were just beginning to be religious themselves. And she was listening to some Christian radio station. This was back in the day when they were very local, and the program was very local. And it was a kind of church lady Bible study type of program she was listening to. And this would have been in probably the middle 70s, early 70s. Yeah, middle 70s, because I was born in 64. So it had to be in the middle 70s, 75 maybe, possibly 74. And she's listening to this lady on the radio. Imagine a big car, nobody's wearing their seatbelts back then. And I didn't want to listen to it, so I reached over to change the radio station, as precocious children will do. And my mother slapped my hand and said, "No, I'm listening to this." And suddenly over the radio, this lady says, Praise the Lord. Somebody tried to turn me off and got stopped. And my mom and I both looked at each other and went, whoa. That was my first really strange encounter with Jesus. The second strange encounter happened around the same time. We had horses, and I was riding my horse in Wash, a couple miles away from home. If you don't live in Southern California, Washes are great big, I guess you'd call them ancient riverbeds, where the snows in the mountains, melt. Most of the rivers are mostly underground most of the time. But then when it rains, then they fill up or the snows melt and it drains out in these washes, and they head from the mountains to the ocean. So anyways, I'm riding my horse through one of these washes, and back in those days, you'd find strange things in the washes, like somebody had set up a group of corrals beside a wash, and I rode by it, but a horse, a young stallion, had gotten out of his pen and there was nobody around. Well, I was riding a mare, and I don't know. Boys will be boys when they're horses. And this stallion took a tremendous interest in my mare, with me on it. And I'm out in the middle of nowhere, and of course I'm terrified, and he's rearing up and kicking his heels, and and I said, "Oh, Jesus, help me." And the stallion stopped. He just stopped. And he turned around, and like nothing, like suddenly he had no interest in us at all, and just wandered away. That was my second woo with Jesus. I had a prayer answered. Okay, that was wild. Well, at the time, we were going to a little Southern Baptist church. These days, it's probably a fairly successful little Baptist church, a few hundred people in it. And it was just down the street from where we lived. And this pastor was a good old-fashioned Southern Baptist fire and brimstone preacher. And every Sunday was fire and brimstone of one sort or another. And it was you're definitely a sinner, and you're definitely going to hell, and you don't want to go to hell, because he painted really vivid pictures of what hell looked like. And well, I'd been terrified just so many times and had so many nightmares, and been kept up at night. And as a child, I'm still a child at this point, 10, 11, 12. Finally, and this would have been in the 5th or 6th grade, that I had my come to Jesus moment. And I walked down, Bandit said, "Sorry, this is Bandit. Hello." Say hello to Bandit. Bandit, say hello to the folks. Every Sunday morning, every meeting, there was an altar call in those days. And this preacher would have the altar call, and folks would come down and get prayed for, or come down and renew their commitment to Christ, or be committed to Christ for the first time. This is what it was to be born again in the 70s in a small Southern Baptist church in Southern California. And so I had too many dreams of me being eaten by worms in the eternal hellfire, for which there is no water to quench. And as a child, or adolescent, walked the aisle and had my big emotional moment, and it was very emotional. I remember I came to him, I said, I want to commit, be rebaptized, because I'd already been baptized twice. Oh my God, to be evangelical in the 70s as a kid. I was baptized once in the Church of Christ by my uncle at around the age 6 or 7. And I got baptized again when my parents joined the Southern Baptist Church. But both of those times were coerced. This time was my third involuntary baptism. Baptists are always happy to, back in those days anyways, Baptists were always happy to baptize. They'd baptize you many times you want to be. So anyway, I got rebaptized. But really that was my initial commitment to Christ, and I guess I was 11 or 12 at the time. I didn't know really. I was signing up for fire insurance, I think, at that point, because of these two experiences, and because that I just described, and because of the hellfire and brimstone preaching of this pastor, I was signing up for fire insurance. So what happened then? Well, I got a Bible, and I opened that Bible up to Matthew chapter 5 as the first section, big section of red text, because it was a red letter edition. And the red letter edition of the red text are the words of Jesus. The black text is everything else. And in Matthew 5 is, of course, the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. And that was, the Sermon on the Mount became something that would stick with me for life. And in fact, it would stick with me through my worst of times. It stuck with me through good times. It's my North Star would be the best way of describing the Sermon on the Mount. When in doubt about anything, about who I am in the world, how to be in the world, the Sermon on the Mount would ultimately be my guide. Even when I strayed, and I could stray pretty far, ethically, emotionally, psychologically, I could be pretty far outside of the faith, but the Sermon on the Mount was the gold standard. I said North Star, so I'm mixing metaphors. It's my gold standard for ethics and how to live in the world and what to expect in the world, and my North Star to guide me when things got really dark, and things could get very dark. Because as it turned out, much later in life, in adulthood, I would be formally diagnosed as type 2 bipolar. Type 2 bipolar is, as you can imagine, is a mix of severe depression, major depression episodes, and hypomania. I used to say it was the kind of depression bipolar disorder, type 2, I used to say, was the kind you would want to get if you had a choice between type 1 and type 2, because type 1 is full-on mania, as opposed to hypomania. Nowadays, I don't know if that's really an accurate way of saying it. I don't think you want either one. And statistically, it's not good. Be 60 years old living with treatment-resistant type 2 bipolar disorder. And in fact, that's what I had. We tried every treatment under the sun, every medication. Nothing worked, and only tended to make things worse. Of course, now with that information in hand, and you know a little bit about my background as my start as a Christian, you immediately want to wonder, well, these, religious experiences, which I would later have many. It wasn't just those first two. How related are they to the bipolar disorder? That's been a long and difficult question, and a source of doubt for me, of course, as you can imagine. When you have an official diagnosis that you're mentally unstable and your mind can't be trusted. At least that's the implication when you get something like that, with any diagnosis like that. It puts everything in doubt, right? And so the following, as I said, I'm 60 now, and I left off when I was about 11 or 12. So in the intervening 48 years, what happened? Well, okay. We'll back out from the depressive, the bipolar for a second, and go on to, I got married in my late 20s. My wife and I met in a Nazarene church here in Southern California also. She had just recently graduated from a Bible college or a Christian Nazarene college. I don't know if you really call it just a Bible college, more than a Bible college, a full-on university. Her focus was on education, and that's what she is. That's her calling in life, is to be an educator. I would meet her, and I was a kind of failed college student. I had dropped out in my early 20s, and partly because of the bipolar disorder, which had yet to be diagnosed, and went through some unstable times let's see, I'll make a long story short here. How do we do this? I ultimately came back to Jesus after the difficulties of that period of my first attempt at college, going to college. And I would meet my wife at the Church of Nazarene that I joined, and I found that church. It's a long trip from the church. Oh my gosh, it's all muddled here. Okay, how do you go from Southern Baptist to the Church of the Nazarene? Well, I'd ultimately be kicked out of the Southern Baptist Church at the age of 17 for being a little too much of a true believer, and got caught up in the middle of a church split that was inadvertent. I never meant to be part of that church split, but somehow I got, because I was working for one of the people who was on the side of the split, the splitters, the schismatics, I don't know what you call them. I was working for one of the people who left the church. I think I got kind of lumped in with them, and so when I, as president of the youth group, wanted to make some rather superficial changes to how we ran things in the youth group, they decided I was trying to start a cult, and so I got formally asked to leave the church I was born again in. So at 17, I was cut loose. There I went to a Calvary Chapel nearby. It was a Calvary Chapel church plant. It was kind of fun. We met in a high school, then we met in a church that we rented, and so on. And I got a little involved with them. That was very exciting. I got my first exposure to charismania in that church. Got to speak in tongues a little bit. I don't know if any of that was very real. All of this, of course, fed the hypomania, bipolar disorder, because that's grist for that mill, baby. And we could talk about that some other time, about how all that works, but it did fuel it. So in the course of things, though, I think doubts began to slip in. I started college at that time, 18, 19. I did a philosophy class, didn't perform great at the philosophy class, but I think at that point, my introduction to philosophy, along with the bigger, wider world of meeting people and girls in college, kind of blew up my concept. And then, of course, being cut loose from the Baptist church. For a while, I was done with the whole Christian thing, let's put it that way. And when I was done being Christian, I was really done being Christian. As many an evangelical college student can testify. Well, my wife went on a different path. She was Nazarene, and she went to a Nazarene college. I married a good girl. And she's the real deal. Truly a good person. And as I said, we met in a local church. She was out here visiting a friend. Well, it turned out she decided she was going to stay here in Southern California. She came from Indiana, went to college in Tennessee, moved to Southern California, and decided to stay and picked up a job teaching. Well, one thing led to another. We started to date. We dated for a week. And after a week, I decided there was no way I was going to do any better than her. It's true. I really did. After a week of dating. It was serious dating. It was every day we were together. But after being together every day for 7 days, I decided, all right, put a ring on it. They didn't. And I did, literally. I went shopping for rings and decided to order one. And asked her to marry me. And to my shock, she agreed. So we dated for a week, got engaged. We didn't rush into it. We let 6 months go by for a wedding, and we got married 6 months later. And in spite of everyone's predictions, it stuck. And in spite of even me having my difficulties. She's a very stable-minded person marrying a very bipolar person. It stuck in spite of all that. So, what happened then? Well, I'm back in the church. I do not know if this is going to be a coherent narrative, but let's keep plowing ahead, unedited and unscripted, obviously. We got married. I started a little business. It was a shoe shop, a shoe repair shop. This went back to being a shoemaker was a trade I had, and I enjoyed it. I was good at it. What I wasn't good at was business. I was meant to be a businessman at that point. I found making money when I was young was too easy, and then at some point it became hard. And I did. So I failed at the business. And of course, my family being a family of entrepreneurs, my dad was an entrepreneur. Being in business was just second nature, so he made it look easy, and it wasn't, and I think I wasn't made for it. So, where do we go from there? Of course, things. So, shutter the business, sell everything, and we moved to Indiana. Tried that for a year, and that was really hard. In the meantime, of course, so we leave. Where do we go from there? Well, while I'm in business, the wife and I were attending the Church of the Nazarene, but decided to leave the Church of the Nazarene and start getting more involved in the vineyard in Anaheim. Now, Anaheim at that time, sorry for the rhyme, Anaheim in those days would have been about a 40-minute drive from home, typically. Freeways weren't nearly as clogged then as they are now. This would have been in the early 90s. And we did a vineyard conference, and we started attending regular services at the vineyard, and so this will take us to my another major spiritual experience happened at the vineyard. And how many minutes are we into this already? Yikes, can't see. Oh goodness, it's taking way too long. I was yet undiagnosed with bipolar, and admitting depression in those days, it was very stigmatized. It's not something you did. Certainly not in my family. People were just beginning to talk about family trauma and its effect on one's ability to function successfully in life. I remember a PBS series at the time that was popular, being led by a psychologist. You probably had New Age folks who were a little more open about these things, but in my neck of the woods, you didn't talk about, and certainly not my family, you didn't admit depression, you didn't talk about depression, you didn't talk about mental illness, you certainly didn't talk about bipolar disorder. And so you say you didn't acknowledge it, you didn't even entertain the thought. Even though I knew I had all the symptoms, I knew I was not well, I knew these emotional ups and downs could not be good, but I think because of the Baptist and Calvary Chapel and then Vineyard influence, I tended to spiritualize all of these states of mind. So depression was the devil. Moments of hypomania were the spirit. Oh, it's hard to look back on and talk about. It's funny. Kind of funny, haha, even, because it's comic that this is how I function as a grown adult, because I raised my children to think, approach their lives in a very different way. But this was the world I inhabited. The devil was real in every way, and that was and it was so bad that at some periods of the when I guess the worst moments in my cycles of depression and hypomania, and they were rapid cycled. So it was my moods could turn on a dime, my mental states could turn on a dime in those days, and I had no defenses. There was no mindfulness practice at that time, no meditation, no deep breathing, no dietary supplements, nothing. It was living bipolar in the raw, man, and it was rough. But there was a period in which I couldn't shut up what I called the devil. This was a voice in my head that just could not stop. It was talking. It was these voices. It was not this one voice, it was voices. Condemning me. I'm starting to mutter as I turn inward and go back to that dark, horrid time. But, if you've ever had the voices of those sermons, I guess it would go, those sermons in the Southern Baptist Church in my childhood would play and replay in the worst way. Not in that pastor's voice, but in some other, these that I just described to the devil. I just called it the devil. The devil's talking to me. And it turned out, and it was somewhat encouraging to read books like Martin Luther's. Hey, a big name like Martin Luther had the same sort of experiences in his little monastery days, where he felt like he had to do battle with the devil. He probably had bipolar too. And Lincoln suffered from depression, and I found it strangely encouraging that Winston Churchill didn't like to stand beside windows in tall buildings because he felt the compunction to jump out. These are things I could relate to as a young man. So anyways, we're at the vineyard one night. The vineyard broke out what they called ministry time. And this would have been after the sermon. So we had worship, sermon, a little worship, and then ministry time. Ministry time in those days basically meant that if you wanted help, you stood up and or raised a hand, I guess. And people around you, some trained, hopefully, would turn and pray for you. Somebody come on, what do you want? What do you need? Well, in my case, I finally said I couldn't take it. I had to stand up because get rid of these voices in my head. These dark voices. I had to get rid of them. As I stood up, the devil's talking to me. I can't shut him up. And so that's what he did. Hand on head. Somebody put their hand on my heart. People were praying. And I went into a kind of trance. And when I came out of the trance, the voices were gone. Another big moment with Jesus. That was kind of cool. It was very nice. Unfortunately, when the voices left, over time I discovered the depression got worse. I like them apples. What I should have done is should have gone back and asked, this depression thing, can we deal with that? And depression got really bad. And at which point, this is about the time we moved to Indiana for a year. And in Indiana was depression. Now we weren't at the vineyard anymore. We didn't have a church to go to. We wandered from church to church, trying to find a place that mixed. My wife looked for work, couldn't find work. I looked for work and worked in factories. It was just a very difficult time. And the depression was really, really bad. It was the depression more than the hypomania. There was not a lot of hypomania for some reason. To the degree there was hypomania, it would have mixed with depression, and you can actually have both at the same time. It gets weird and complicated, but it was. I guess my focus was on the depression. It's just deep sadness, horrible sadness. No more voices, just horrible sadness. And hopelessness, and I guess certain kind of dark machinations of, for self-destruction. So we finally took a chance and sought out for the first time mental help, psychological help, psychiatric help. Well, we didn't have very good insurance at the time, and so there was very limited help they could offer. And so one thing led to another. We moved back to California. My wife got her, they just treated her like it was a leave of absence, and they restored her job with the school district, and we got really good insurance again. And with really good insurance came good some good psychological and psychiatric coverage, and I began that trip. So I'd had this rather miraculous experience where we got rid of the voices, but we didn't get rid of the depression. Why I didn't try healing for the depression is kind of beyond me in retrospect. Because one worked, I don't know why the other wouldn't have. Placebo effect is powerful. As a Christian, I believe God is powerful, so I don't know why I didn't keep pursuing it. Or maybe I did my own ways and it didn't quite work. My memory's foggy. Because in the course of things at this point, I would get the official diagnosis, not just being majorly depressed, but having type 2 bipolar. And in the course of things, we would try many drug cocktails, and electroconvulsive therapy, brain zapping. And that did some real damage to memory. And after a few sessions, I just called a halt to it because it was shocking. It was a whole month's worth of memory. Poof. But I do have one vivid memory of this time. I was they rolled you in. I don't know how they do ECT back now, but back then I went to the hospital for it. It was an outpatient procedure, but it was, they had to put you on a respirator and so on and so forth. And so you went to the hospital and they doped you up pretty good and rolled me to the treatment center in a wheelchair, and then rolled me back. And when it turned out that at that time I was my mom. I'm getting my words confused. My wife was pregnant with our first son. Well, with our first child, our only son, first child. And I remember coming back. I'd forgotten everything else. But while I was getting ECT, she had an appointment to make sure that the pregnancy was still on course, because there were some concerns. And I remember asking her, "Do we still have a baby?" And she said, "Yes, we still have a baby." Yes. So it couldn't erase everything. It did a lot of damage, though. It was really not good, but I remember that. I remember that. And so, where are we at in the story? Tempted to stop here because we are at... Hi, this is Mark, part 2. All right. I know, this is ridiculous. The idea of anybody wanting to watch. Sorry, but 40 minutes is part 1. Oh, goodness. So part 2, let's see if we can move this along a little more clearly and quickly. All right. So when we left off, I was being rolled out of probably my last session of the ECT. I don't remember if it was the first or the last electroconvulsive therapy. But I was being rolled out, and I got news that my wife was still pregnant with our son. That was a happy moment. There would be challenges along the way. He would be born. He'd require neurosurgery to correct for birth defects at 3 months. He had several trips to the hospital in his first years. They were tremendously challenging, but he and my daughter would become the joy of my life. And because, as it would turn out, being that my wife had the good job and I was still I had no career because I kind of, I as I mentioned before, I'd failed in my first business attempt, and I had gone back to college in the course of things. We'll skip over that stuff, and I was working to kind of develop myself as a writer. I had no, it was obvious. I would stay at home, continue to try to write, and take care of the kids while my wife went to work, made the real money, and provided us with good health insurance. So the first year with my son was a tremendous challenge, and it would also be the period of time in which we would lose my dad. So this would have been we lost my dad, I believe, in April of 1999. Hope I have that year right. No, let's see. We lost my dad in April of 98. While my wife was pregnant with our daughter, our second child. And my son was still little. My son would have been just a little over a year. He was just a little over a year old at that point. My dad was alive for the birthday party, and that was it. A month later, he died. It was very sudden, and heart failure, and it was a bit of a blow. He would have been in his 60s himself, middle 60s. And so that was my first confrontation with death, and it was shocking. My dad and I had a funny relationship. As I said, well, I don't know if I said this or not, I kind of grew up pampered, getting way too many things, but a bit bullied. My father wasn't abusive, but he was a strong personality, and he didn't. Diversity in opinion wasn't a high value in my family. And I was a strong-willed, difficult child, and full of opinions. And so I could make his bald head turn purple with anger at times. But at the same time, I know he loved us deeply. And I sense his presence with us sometimes. It could be just silly superstition, but I feel like he's, particularly with recent events, with regard to the care of my mother, I feel like he's been there with us like any saint would be for people who believe in such things. Don't have to believe any of that. It's okay. Don't worry about it. But so my daughter never got to meet her grandpa. My son did. And now we are at home, and I am the stay-at-home dad. I'm back in college, hopefully trying to finish up a degree, wanting to go on to get a graduate degree. Focuses on English, literature, and writing. Making really good progress, being successful. And then I think because of the death of my dad, somehow systems became overloaded. And back into treatment I went. And with treatment went all hopes of success in college. It was because the drugs were overwhelming. I mean, again, massive amounts. I had yet to find a good psychiatrist. And so we were playing throw spaghetti against the wall with the meds. Try to find something that would stick. ECT was no go at that point. And I couldn't retain. I couldn't read it. I'd read a novel and couldn't remember any. I couldn't answer 10 questions about it, And yet I had to get up every morning and take care of these little kids. So in spite of the difficulty, I still had the parent. And it was probably a lifesaver for my children, because they were a source of joy. And in spite of everything, the blows to the ego are phenomenal when you fail at college twice. And the second time it was because I was so, and I had professors pleading with me to just stay with it, Oh goodness, yeah. But it wasn't going to happen. So but I did learn to write, and I learned to write extremely well in that second trip through college. Not as well as I would like, but I think I learned the craft. And I did get an education. I didn't get a degree, but I got an education. And that would serve me well. And I would learn how to think. That was the start, I would say, beginning of learning how to think was in that time. It wasn't done yet. That would come when I began to be introduced to Indian philosophy and ultimately Buddhism, and the practices. Then I would really begin to learn how to think. These early stages, it was just the start. And but I'm raising the kids. They're just the center of our lives. It was find the perfect preschool. We did travel way out of our way for it. Drive. Oh, it was crazy. Then find the perfect elementary setting. We found a dual immersion program that was luckily close to us in that case. So in our town, we had a Spanish-English dual immersion program that the kids started. They started out in kindergarten, and they spent 90% of their day in Spanish. Poor little kids. But they learned Spanish. My son still speaks it well. My daughter, I don't know if how well she speaks it. I don't know. I'll have to ask her. What else? Where do we go from there? Church life. Let's go to church life. While the kids were small, we were attending a United Methodist church in town. that was very close by, just a few blocks away from home. Not even a few, a couple blocks away from home. Beautiful people, beautiful, beautiful people. Wife was fine with it. The kids were fine with it. I started to get more involved. There are two problems. First problem was worship services in the United Methodist Church for someone with my mind, unique mental characteristics, to put it kindly, was like watching paint dry. It was just, I couldn't get into it. And it was very difficult. I mean, we stuck with this church for a while. We were there for a few years. And second problem was with involvement. They thought I would be great to lead the youth. It was not a good idea. Last thing and this is what, and I think this is what broke me with the church, was not my tendency to need a little more spice in the worship service, but that I was put into a situation that I immediately found myself in over my head. I was just barely beginning to learn how to manage my life as a person. You meet these kids and they need help, and I couldn't help. I fell over my head immediately. And I felt the need. I didn't call it this at the time, but I felt the need to run. And the excuse I made was I wanted to leave. I wanted to go to a different church. I went back to the Vineyard. The wife said, I'm done with this. I don't want to do church anymore. So by myself, I took excursions off to the Vineyard. By this time, John Wimber has passed, and the Vineyard isn't what it used to be. Or at least not what I had been used to. And I went to one church, and we lived in an area where the nearest vineyard would have been either west towards San Bernardino, or east towards Palm Springs. And I went to the one in Palm Springs. I drove in, and I don't know, something about the whole scene made me sick to my stomach. And I told the pastor as much, and he took a lot of offense at it. He was very offended. I can't help what I felt. I drove in, and a lot of very rich, expensive cars, a lot of pampered people. Therefore, a lot of self-affirming, self-serving reasons, and self-serving religion, even at that point in my life, felt antithetical to the religion to the Christianity I had converted into, and the Christianity that caught my heart was, again, Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the meek, all that stuff. So slowly over time, it just, I think, my mind became less and less associated with being a Christian, and the struggles again with living with treatment-resistant bipolar disorder. It was a slog. Raising the kids, and then at some point I decided I'm going to be a realtor because it was a way to be both a stay-at-home dad and make money in theory. And of course, never take financial advice from me. At least my history. I was signed up to be a realtor a year before the Great Crash, the 2008, 2009 Great Recession, and the housing collapse that started a year before that. And so I just, worst possible time. So for that. So I came out of being a realtor saying, I felt like doing penance. So I did penance at Walmart. I went to work for Walmart. This was my way of doing penance, and it was good. It was, you signed up, and I would I worked at a cash register and engaged with the public, and occasionally the public would take some verbal abuse from the public, and then you would go. And at lunch breaks, I would work on my novel, and I would go back to work, and then go home. It was work you could leave at home. Leave at work. You just, show up, clock out, done. But again, the depression not dealt with yet. Not dealt with yet. Ultimately, we would move back to our home in Redlands, or back to Redlands, not to our home, but move back to Redlands, rent a house here. At the time when I worked for around this period of time when I was a realtor, and then worked for Walmart, and the kids were elementary school age. We lived in a town called Banning, which was between Redlands and Palm Springs. And Redlands is adjacent to San Bernardino, so I'll give you an idea of the geography, if any of that means anything to anybody. And it was at this point I would meet the psychiatrist that would help me the most with the bipolar disorder. And first off, he weaned me off of the cocktail meds I've been put on. Left one on for kind of safety purposes, I think. And then began adding dietary supplements, certain essential amino acids, and then suggested various experimental things, but the one that was most important was he told me to look up a book called The Power of Now. I think is what it's called, Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle. Kind of new agey, but he sold it to me as a kind of self-help cognitive therapy approach. And that started me on a route that ultimately took me to yoga, and from yoga to Indian philosophy, and from Indian philosophy to Buddhism. And these practices produced the first thing they produced in me was the ability to stand apart emotionally from my my depression. I actually had the experience of because in the course of things, of course, I learned how to meditate. And in learning how to meditate, I learned how to gain emotional distance from my mind, watch my mind think. Didn't repress, you don't repress thoughts, you don't repress emotions, but you don't react to them. You don't take any action either. You just watch them. Imagine a little train go by, and each, little cars on the train go by, and just watch your thoughts. Watch your thoughts. They just come and go. An emotion rises and goes and falls. And in this case, in those early days, it's focusing on the breath. Return to the breath. Okay. Thought comes up. And sometimes you might say, "Oh, that's thinking," and let it go. Don't push it. Don't pull it. Just let it go. That was extremely helpful, believe it or not. To just learn how to. It's not thinking, but it was learn how to not be driven by whatever happens between your ears. Just kind of let it be. You're using mind. In a sense, it's a skill of using mind to manipulate your mind. And it was at this point, too, I wouldn't realize that this is what I was doing until much later, but I began to see the bipolar as a kind of gift. That is to say, I had since childhood, had always a certain kind of melancholic temperament. The hypomania could be used as a gift to provide healing to these dark episodes. So that would be all darkness all the time. But that actually, you could rise up and once I learned how to gain perspective and not be controlled by my thoughts and by my emotions, but live in peace with them, I could start to have, at the time I didn't know they were hypomanic episodes also. I wouldn't have called them that. But in retrospect, I think most of them were. But in meditation, I would have various hypomanic experiences that I'd called spiritual. Whether they were spiritual or whether they were just products of my brain, certain mental configuration, I don't know. I can't say. But you could say that what in Pentecostal language, you might say what the devil meant for evil, God used for good. So I went, it's one strange experience after another. Just for example, while listening to Ellen Watts one day, I suddenly, my consciousness, my center of self, shifted outside of my head and rested on my left shoulder. Not for hours or days, but for weeks. For weeks. I was outside of myself, watching myself. That's a strange experience. And if you tell us, and I did not share this with my psychiatrist, but it was going to therapy. I was like, I'm not going to tell you that I'm not in my body anymore, but okay, but I'm with it. I know my zip code, as Ram Dass used to say, but I'm also not here. Oh, Lord, the brain, the human brain. But and this was hours. When I meditated, I meditated for hours. And on top of meditation, there was lots and lots of education and contemplation and reflection and so on. So, I was in this stuff day in, day out. when I wasn't taking care of the kids, wasn't making dinner for the wife or repairing a car, or doing work around the house in some other way, I was in this state of constant study and contemplation of yoga and Indian philosophy, and then Buddhism, and then Paul Watts and Ram Dass, and a whole host of teachers. Those are the big names that come to mind, of course, and a lot of you, no doubt, cross their paths because they're all over YouTube these days. And that experience of my consciousness will not return to my body, the center of my awareness would not return to my body until I had another hypomanic experience. And this was with a teacher. I think his focus is a combination of TM and Kashmiri Shaivism and other esoteric practices out of India. He's a Russian guy named, I may not be Russian, maybe from somewhere else, but former Soviet Union, a guy named Igor Kufayev, I think is how you pronounce the name. And I was sitting there listening to one of his teachings, and in the course of things, I went into, in his case, it's because it's of the Shaivism, he called it Shakti. In Pentecostal, charismatic, or we'd call it the Holy Spirit. And I was hit with the Holy Spirit powerfully by listening to Igor teach, and my consciousness was reunited with my body, and I had this most incredible kind of Kundalini awakening. I mean, it's all lit up. And in all honesty, I cannot tell the difference between, say, Pentecostal experiences with the Holy Spirit and that sort of enthusiasm and this Kundalini thing. And that's another area of Igor's teaching is with Kundalini yoga. So I'm really confused, but I'm doing well though. I'm happy for the first time in my life. I'm happy, authentically happy. Depression, thoroughly under control. It's not there, but it's not governing, because again, that emotional distance that I suddenly had tools with the meditation, and the yoga. I had tools that I could rely on. It was standard mindfulness, awareness, meditation, nothing fancy, but I had tools to control my emotional states. And I could say I was really happy. And my psychiatrist was pleased with the results, whatever we were getting. I didn't tell him all the details of how we were getting there. Probably should have, but I was afraid of being committed. So I didn't share with him my yogic experiences. And by now we're probably in, where are we at, 2014, say 2013. So a lot of years have passed to get to this point, but I'm actually authentically happy, consistently happy. Question is in bipolar terms, was I just in a prolonged state of hypomania, or I don't know. But the rapid cycling's more or less stopped at this time. And I just became much more even emotionally. I could even say that at times I became a little too detached. And I stumbled across, I began at this point, that jingling is my German Shepherd. Sorry about the noise. She's got an itch. But, let's see, where's my thought going? I had some self-control, and that was a revelation to me. I had emotional distance. I was also sensed that I was trying to approach Buddhism at this point, and I was stumbling. I'd listen to Thich Nhat Hanh or read Thich Nhat Hanh, listen to or read something from the Dalai Lama, and I felt an attraction to them, but they all seemed too religious to me at this point, because I was obviously very religious, but it was very strange. I wasn't able to believe. Like, they talk about reincarnation, because you really can't be. I mean, there are American Buddhists out there that they consider reincarnation superstition and so on, and but from the perspective of someone like Thich Nhat Hanh or the Dalai Lama, it's impossible to be a Buddhist and not believe in birth after death. It's all part of the package. Well, in the course of things, this is all happening around the same time, not right on the heels probably of the Igor experience. It may have actually happened before. Okay, I honestly can't remember at this point. I'd come across someone, an Indian saint, the 20th century. Her name is Anandamayama. She died, I think, in the 1980s. But I saw a picture of her when she was young, and I was startled at the beauty. It was just a radiant sort of beauty. I just could not take my eyes off of her. I looked up her Wikipedia page and things like that, and read about her. And there isn't a lot on teachings from her, at least there wasn't at the time. There wasn't a lot accessible. I only knew that Ram Dass thought highly of her, and I thought highly of Ram Dass at the time. I still do. But Amanda Maya just blew my mind. I looked at her, just what an amazing person. Just something about her was just the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Well, at some point, I don't know, a few days later, after coming across her, I woke up in the morning, one morning, like any morning, only to have this image of a woman all in white, and that I took to be Anandamayama. And I don't know if it was Anandamayama or a Marian apparition anymore. I don't know what to call it. But this voice, she just said, "Let me in. Let you in." I mean, I feel like I'm fully awake, right? Wife is next to me in bed, already awake and reading a book, as she is wont to do from time to time. It's her habit. But she's reading a book, and so her back is turned to me, and my back is turned to her, and I'm laying on my side, and this saint is saying, let me in. Let you in. I thought, oh no, this isn't right. I was thinking in my head, this isn't right. I can't be having some lustful thoughts about, I don't want to have some lustful dream about some Indian saint. This is wrong. So I close my eyes. I open them back up, and there she is still, and she says, let me in. No. It's always classic. Why is it always three? I don't know why it's always three in these stories, but third time, I open up, there she is. Let me in. Third time, let me in. Third time. Okay, so I lift up the cover, and whoosh, straight into the chest. Like just boom, like, oh. And whoa. And I must have jolted or something, because the wife said, are you okay? Her back still turned to me while she's reading a book. Yeah. Of course I'm lying. Yeah, I'm fine. Well, that was weird. So I go, okay. Take your shower as you do. You get up in the morning. I went with this time. By this time, I'm in a morning exercise routine, part of the yoga and everything else. And I do my morning walk, which would have been a couple miles at the time, at least. And so I'm doing my morning walk, and suddenly everything looks different and feels different. And I suddenly have nothing but love for the Dalai Lama and Thich Nhat Hanh and reincarnation. Of course, that makes perfect sense to me. And love of God. Oh, tell me about God. Oh, I suddenly believe I love God. This experience, and that was the big thing. Something I never felt I felt admiration, I felt fear, I felt lots of things about God, but I don't know if I could ever say I felt love. I knew just an ecstatic love for God, and that was something Anandamaya Ma was known for. She was known for as a bhakti, as a great bhakti, just a lover of God, devoted, just radiated love for everyone and love for God, and that was kind of part of her thing, what she was known for in India at the time. That's why she had so many followers. And from that moment on, I can't say I've ever had a great deal of difficulty loving God. God, struggle making sense of God. There would still be a lot of time from that moment on where I would, trying to make sense of any of these things. At this point, I have no coherent worldview. Am I a Christian? Am I a Buddhist? Am I, something else? Am I a New Agey American Hindu, or what sometimes the hippies call voodoo? What am I? I don't know. But it was great. It was a wonderful feeling, and wow. But then the next time I came across a picture of Anandamaya Ma, the magic was gone. I mean, she's still, you see these pictures, she's a lovely Indian woman, but just another person. Instead of, she went from being like this almost angelic thing, like I said, Marian, and almost like she's an incarnation of the mother of Jesus. Now she's just a regular person. I look at her, but I don't understand any of this. Okay. Except we'll just call it, feel free, perfectly free to call it all part of the crazy and move on. That's fine with me. So where do we go? This is 2013, at which point, while all this is happening, my psychiatrist says I'm doing so well with regard to the rapid cycling, the control of depression, and there's no really what we might call negative hypomania. Maybe that's what we'll call it, negative versus positive hypomania. I was having positive hypomanic experiences, but and I would say positive in the sense that they were healing. These were healing experiences from years and years and years of trauma, of dealing with my past experiences and my with both in the world as a person and society, as well as my past experiences with depression. But these all healed, these experiences, these hypomanic experiences, the Kundalini and then the Mayama experience and so on. These were healing. And so the psychiatrist ready to cut me loose. He just said, unless you want to visit every 6 months just to check in, he says, you're well on the way to recovery and I'm done with you. So I said, well, let's give it 6 months before we cut this loose. I made a point. 6 months go by, everything is still on course, everything's looking good, no big depressions to report. Very happy. I'm still on my yoga high. Studying more and more Buddhism. And so yeah. Well, at this point, a couple of years go by, we send my son off to college early. He goes to college early he leaves leaves high school at 16 to go to college. We go to college in Massachusetts, 3,000 miles away from home. So that occupies a great deal of time and energy, believe it or not. There's a lot of work to sending a 16-year-old away for college. And there, as families are there's always challenges. And I'm moving deeper and deeper into Buddhism. And finally, come early 2016, there's a Buddhist Lama named Garchen Rinpoche. I decided I want to go meet in person there. And I thought it'd just be a couple days. We're having difficulties. There's, like I said, family challenges I'm not going to get into. But there's some stress, but I feel like I need to get away and get some support, see if this guy will help. It's not depression, it's just, I feel like my tools are getting a little worn. I need a little boost. Well, Garchen Rinpoche is an interesting character. He's based right now, he's getting older, he's got a center in Chino Valley, Arizona, up on a mountain there. And he was a Tibetan who fought in the resistance against the Chinese takeover of Tibet, and ultimately ended up in a Chinese prison camp for about 20 years. And that's where he completed his training. He's actually what's considered in Tibet culture to be a tulku, highly realized bodhisattva who can control the body he inhabits and for a lifetime, and he lives for the well-being of all others, and so for the benefit of all sentient beings, as they say. And he's the real deal. I mean, if you really want to meet, for me, he's like the best of the best. I mean, he's the Dalai Lama and Garchen Rinpoche were very important people to me at this point in 2016. And so in April of 2016, I make the pilgrimage to visit Garchen Rinpoche. And on the way there, it's a drive. I took an old car that hadn't gotten a lot of exercise, but I took this old car in faith, and it made it all the way there, made it all the way back. And but the trip was really interesting in that I kept having visions of what meeting him was going to be like. It was the same vision every time. Across this long desert drive, it was 6 hours or something like that, across most desolate desert Southern California and Arizona have to offer. And it was very odd. In this vision, I could see the room, I could see the walls around me, what it was like. I could imagine the people around me. I could see him, how he would meet me and greet me. He'd walk through and welcome me. Hello, yeah, welcome. Oh, God, you made it. Right, this sort of thing. I'm so happy to see you. Kept having this vision. Well, strange thing is with this experience was when I got there, I was running late, so I missed the first session. So first couple hours, and I roll in late, and so I sit in the kind of little right at the edge, at the threshold between the ante room where everyone took their shoes off and so on, and the meeting area. I don't know what you call it. And it's a big group, and he's just wrapped up, and he's got a little cane, and he's walking. Swear to God, the experience of actually meeting him perfectly mirrored the experience of those visions of meeting him on my way there. So we're off to a roll. We're right back to that land of where the radio, like that lady on the radio said, praise the Lord, somebody tried to turn me off. And they couldn't. They were stopped. Well, here again, one of these strange, miraculous, sort of mystical experiences. Now, of course, people say human memory is a funny thing. You know, take it with a grain of salt. Don't worry about it. You don't have to believe any of this. So, honest, really, don't feel any obligation whatsoever. But this is my experience. Well, while I was there, I got there. After this experience, we had the afternoon session. In the afternoon session, I find out, I got from my wife that a girl at my daughter's school, she just started high school at this point, a friend of hers had committed suicide. And so the question, of course, was, should I stay or should I go? Well, I talked to somebody there, and I'm just a little overwhelmed, of course. And Garchen Rinpoche, not knowing any of this, I was told, had just changed his schedule, his plans, and they were going to do a ceremony for the dead. But I'd have to stay an extra couple days. So instead of going home early, like I was tempted to do, because I was afraid for my daughter's safety, I wanted to be there for my daughter. I felt the need to be there for my daughter and for this little girl who killed herself. People who commit suicide, of course, being a person with bipolar background, I'm sensitive to people who are tempted to and do commit suicide, because I know those places. I've been there in my mind. So I stayed. And it blew my mind, of course. And I'm the only Buddhist in the room. Buddhists, American Buddhists, and emotions don't always go. I'm, I'm being full on Pentecostal in this thing, and they're all, Jesus Christ. I'm both in a state of ecstasy and boiling over in tears as I'm going through this experience of the ceremony for the dead. And I'm there for this little girl. I'm there for my daughter. And I sincerely feel like something is there. We're there to help her. And afterwards, I decided, well, okay, I'm going to do the full. I'm going to go on. I'm going to take the leap and become a card-carrying Tibetan Buddhist. I get in line, go through the ceremony, plucks out some little bit of hair. He laughs, I laugh, because I have almost no hair, as you can see. But he found at that point I hadn't shaved, so he found enough. Pluck. Can't remember. I've been pulled it from my beard, who knows? He giggled. He just thought it was the funniest thing. Well, he keeps that hair and he prays over you, and it is a way for him to pray for you. It's an attachment for him, so it's carried in a little something, cup or something. So we're initiated. I'm given a Tibetan name. I can't tell you what it is off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up because I don't use it. And we touch foreheads. Okay, it was great. I was so happy. And it's time to go and head on out. It's a long trip down that mountain, so it takes about at least 20 minutes on a dirt road to get down that mountain and then back onto the main highway and heading towards home. I don't know if it was 2 hours before I knew that the message, people believe that these lamas can transmit teachings telepathically. It's a Buddhist thing, Tibetan thing, probably even more Tibetan than anything else. But the message to me was go back, go home, complete your karma, kind of complete your training. Be a good Christian and be a good American. How you like them apples? I went to become a Buddhist only to be told to be a Christian. Okay, all right. I don't know what to do with it at that point. And there's lots of serious drama at home because, situation, the girl and my daughter. I still have, she's my son. Both my daughter and my son are still minors at this point. He's away at college, and there's always things to deal with him, and my daughter always things to deal with her. And I'm trying to write. I'm trying to get this novel together that I could start publishing, and then I got these orders: go be a Christian and a Buddhist. Scratch that. I'm kind of living under orders from Garching Rinpoche, go be a Christian and an American. Okay. He didn't kick me out. He didn't say, don't be a Buddhist. He just said, go be a good Christian and be a Buddhist. That's it. I attribute this to him. This may have all just been thoughts in my head. Somehow I concluded in my brain that this is what I need. Or perhaps this is the Holy Spirit speaking to me through him, saying, this has been a great experience for you. Now I want you to go home and be a Christian and Buddhist. Just like that scripture after the accident recently from Luke. Simon, Satan has asked for you, but I've prayed. Jesus said, I prayed for you. You won't be sifted. And when you return, strengthen your brothers. So, this is where we're at. Didn't know what to do with it. It would take some time. And there would be challenges. Right after seeing Garchi Rinpoche, I'd come home, there'd be a major auto accident, total my car, on the totaling of my car, I would get injections for my back, which would probably be the reason why I ended up getting shingles, and I got shingles on my face. It's called trigeminal, and it was just along 3 nerve pathways on the whole right side of my face and head, right over the eye. Very, very dangerous sort of form of shingles to get, and also very painful. It was the worst. At that point, it was the worst pain I'd ever experienced. All this happened in 2016. And so within a few months of seeing Garchi Rinpoche, not only could I went through a lot of difficulties, physical challenges, and then this pain. Then there would be the neuralgia that was left over. It would flare up so violently at times we thought it was a flare up of the shingles. It was probably just a flare up of the neuralgia. It's so extreme. It's, imagine like having a colony of fire ants living under your skin, only it's on your face. And I never learned how to meditate through it. I would sit and sit. And so my meditation practice slowly just kind of went away. Which makes me wonder if Garchi was behind that. I'm not going to let you meditate anymore. Garchi or God, one of you guys, not going to let Mark meditate, because you'd sit and meditate. Oh my gosh, the neuralgia just get worse, because you just, again, ants under the skin, over your face, cover around your eyes, over your ears. Oh, it was horrible. This would last for a couple of years. It slowly got better. Oh, God, 2016, what a year. Of course, we won't talk about what happened in American culture that year. Quite a year. Is there anything else of note between that and what happened next? Let's just jump ahead now. Pandemic time, 2020. Up to the lockdowns, I'd been a pretty faithful vegetarian. I'm not full on vegan. I still allowed myself eggs, and I still allowed myself dairy. So I wasn't vegan, but I was vegetarian. And but with the pandemic, shortages of everything, everybody at home, cooking so much at home, I was done just trying to make separate meals for everybody and myself and everything else, and things being shut down. So I gave up, I pretty much am not meditating, and now I gave up the vegetarianism. And so my ties to Buddhism are becoming thinner. And in October of 2021, I met with a friend. We did lunch together. He's a friend, but he's more than a friend. He would be my cousin's son. He's also the son of a man who had been my best friend in high school and college. And the man, his father died tragically, so I feel some connection, deep connection to this boy. Anyways, this young man, not boy, young man. And he asked me, we got into a Bible conversation, and it'd been a while, I don't know. At various times I read the Bible. I would read the Bible regularly throughout my life. So I've been through it multiple times. I don't know, the New Testament hundreds of times, probably. certainly parts of it hundreds of times. And the whole Bible, I've been through it many times. I know the Bible, I've been through it. But for some reason, at this point, well over a year and a half into the pandemic, I don't think I've really been into the Bible much in that period of time. And I was not into, and my Buddhism was slipping too. So I was pretty spiritually dry at that point. I'm just focused on the day to day. It wasn't the worst time, but it wasn't a spiritually rich time either. And but he stirred something in me that made me go back to the Bible. But there was something in me that said, if you open that book up, it's gonna get you. And I was kind of worried because I had the hypomania, bipolar, depression, all that in the back of my head saying, do I want to ride this roller coaster again? So, but I did. I opened it up. In the course of doing that, I said, it was very interesting, a lot of fun. Back into the Bible every day. It was very exciting. I read it with new eyes. Because I hadn't read it in a couple of years, probably. I mean, I hadn't been in it at all much. At least I don't think I had. I mean, if I did, it wasn't memorable. And I stumbled across G.K. Chesterton's biography of St. Francis of Assisi. And it knocked my socks off. Oh my goodness. St. Francis was the kind of Christian I wanted to be all along. And it's so alive. It was wonderful. It's a great book. Really, I recommend it highly. And so I'm in the Bible and I'm reading St. Francis, and it's very good. It's going, nothing's happening. I mean, I'm not having any charismatic experiences. I'm not speaking in tongues. I'm not prophesying. I'm not having any of those. I'm not going to church. I'm just reading the Bible, and I'm going through his biography. Well, at one point, because of politics, the state of the world, the state of everything, I don't know. I was in a moment of deep frustration and worry about everyone, about family, about society, about my future, about my place in it. About where I was in life overall, just everything, just frustrated, disgusted. Well, in that moment, I'm in the bathroom of all places. It's a great place to have visions. The whole room in my mind became dark. And off to the left, it's always to the left, so there's some brain thing going on there probably. Off to the left, there was a cross. So I'm in total darkness, except the cross. And that cross, and I just looked at the cross. In my mind, I looked at the cross, and intuitively, without even thinking, I said, you take it all. You take it. And with that, it was like a wind moved through me, hit me through my chest, but went through every particle in my body. Every atom felt suddenly like I had been passed through. And there were some marks that came with that. And I found I can't share it all. I wish I could. I don't. Let's just say certain my mind was being my mind got rewired in that moment in a very special way. I learned I was given a certain, oh, this is where language fails me, and I'm afraid to share too much because I don't want to put anything on you. Think that, well, this, if somebody is like, if this happens to be resonating with anyone, I don't want you to think that, well, it's always going to be like this for you too. I want to game the system for you. But I will say that certain embarrassing habits were taken away. A back pain taken away. And I had the most, if it was hypomania, we'll keep it going with the hypomania theme. But it's atypical hypomania, because it was hypomania. It lasted a lot longer than your typical hypomanic episode. And this, for months and months, I went around just in this state of the after effects of this, the afterglow of this event lasted for an astonishingly long time. And this is why I wear this cross now, every day, to not forget it, and as a reminder of this powerful encounter that was really life-changing, and it whole new levels of faith. It was a lot like the Anandamaya experience, only I would say exponentially more profound. It really shook things up. It's around this time that I had actually before without getting too much into the details, that I became the primary caregiver to my mother, who's coping with dementia in old age. And so I went from being a parent to my children, to in a pretty short time, to having very little in between, to being the primary caregiver of a mother. There wasn't a whole lot of time between to just be me, as they say. I had and it wasn't that great anyway. So it's not like, just be. I wasn't giving up anything. I suppose that was part of what was stressing me out. And it primed the pump for me to meet the Holy Spirit in this profound way. So I don't know if I'm a good American. I don't even know what that is. But I am, and I don't know if I'm a good Christian. That's up for other Christians to decide. They're going to have to, or God, I guess, to make up this, determine where I fall. But to go be a Christian and be American, I think I think I got Garchin's orders, and I think at that point they finally came into full fruition. So I started to try to go to church. Right after this, I went. It's family church, and I shared my experiences with the pastor of that church, who's also a member of my family, extended family, and closely related to the young man that I spoke of earlier, and I would try to take my mom, but did not go well. for her. And so that first attempt at going back to church wasn't successful. For that reason, I could have just lied to her and said, Mom, I'm just going out on Sunday mornings. She lives with us, or lived with us at the time. And I had yet to realize that, because if I couldn't take her to church, but at the same time, I couldn't just go to church on Sundays and not have to deal with the consequences of hers not wanting me to take her. I couldn't take her, but then if I took her, I couldn't take her, right? See what I'm saying? It's like you have to live with somebody with dementia to know what I'm talking about. And I had yet to develop the skills on how to manage that relationship. So I stopped trying to go. I just told them, we're not going for a while. Around this time too, I started to come across Paul Vanderklay's channel, trying to find, Christian YouTube. Christian YouTube is by and large, Christian social media is generally pretty much a turnoff to me. I don't think they have any room for someone who comes back to Jesus through Buddhism. It doesn't fit in the paradigm. They don't have sockets for those bolts, right? It just doesn't work. But I came across Paul Vanderklay's channel, and at first it was rough, wasn't easy. I didn't mesh well. I still don't get the Jordan Peterson appeal, but he's a big deal within. Peterson is a big deal for Paul, and subsequently for a lot of people within Paul's circle. And that circle of people, his channel's many tens of thousands at this point in size. And he has active listeners who are regularly interacting with him. And there are many little sub-channels that have developed around him. They're building a little YouTube community, and they call that This Little Corner. So this little corner of the internet. And it's Paul Vanderklay is kind of the center of that, with Jonathan Pajot, Eastern Orthodox Canadian. I believe he was converted from evangelicalism to Eastern Orthodoxy. And he's an artist, and he brings a certain perspective on things. And he's also influential upon Jordan Peterson. So you have this little triumvirate going with Paul on the ground, kind of the one that I find most easily accessible to. Okay. And over time, and listening to different, their videos, but I usually listen to them. Paul Vanderklay is a Dutch Reformed minister. His official church denomination is Christian Reformed. Calvinist, but I'd call him Calvinist light. He holds his Calvinism seriously, but lightly, in the sense that he doesn't let that get in the way of his relationships or his pastoral responsibilities. And his pastoral responsibilities extending beyond his small church out into the wider world through his YouTube channel. So in the course of things, that's, I suppose, why I'm here making this video. Because as I begin to interact more and more with people in his circle, I'm interacting with in the comments, and I've actually been on a couple live streams with Luke Thompson, I think is his last name. He's also on, they simulcast on Grail Country, another channel within this little corner. And so as I interact with these folks, everybody's this big part of the process for them. It's a very diverse group of people, and they're all sharing their stories, and so I'm sharing with you mine. And here I am, and where you meet me now is back where we started. Over 4 weeks ago, I had an accident. And a dog attacked my dog while I was out walking her. In the course of things, I took a nosedive into the cement. Broke some bones in my shoulder. And got another little word from the Lord. And that word was, and I kind of get the impression this is how I'm going to take it. The word from the Lord was that passage from Luke. Simon, Simon, Satan wants you to sift you like wheat. But I have prayed for you. And when you return, strengthen your brothers and sisters, presumably. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at. So I'm going to go, went back to church last week for the first time. No, nothing magical, and it's not a magical church. It's not a Pentecostal church, not a charismatic church. I thought, well, what church should I go to? I'll just go back to the church. It's my family church. It's a church that I could easily, I asked them if it's okay if I come. They said they would be happy to have me. Okay. I'll stay there as long as they can take me. And I'll keep interacting with the folks in this little corner. Like I said, summer. Oh, I forgot. The takeaway to that verse, how to apply it in my life. Well, that's what I'm doing. I'm back here to try to sifting process. I'm reminded of that passage in 1 Corinthians 5, where Paul has got this one character who's been particularly bad. He's sleeping with his father's wife. It's pretty horrific, ethically. And you can imagine how disruptive that would be to a church community, right? And Paul says, deliver his body to Satan so that his soul might be saved on the day of judgment. I think I'm getting a sense of what this means. I can't take anymore. I'm done. So I'm here. Wrap this up. I don't know if this is doing anything for anybody, but the intent was to help and support you in your faith journey. And in the future, I'm going to try to make more videos about living with bipolar disorder and having faith. Because the fact is this became a revelation to me a couple years ago, in the midst of everything, is that I'm not free of the bipolar. It still requires active management. It doesn't control me the way it used to. Depression's, I can get as depressed as anybody, but it doesn't ruin my life. Wouldn't stop me from accomplishing anything anymore. the highs are not so high that I don't suddenly want to do crazy things. Although there are moments, but it's still there, and it's in a sense that it is something to take seriously. And that Jesus isn't just taking it away. Bipolar disorder is, particularly if it's untreated, is considered to be degenerative, progressive, and chronic. So in theory, you live with it long enough, it'll get you. I'm not too concerned at this point because I do feel like I have the tools to manage it. As necessary, I will seek help. As we go along. So I don't consider myself, quote, healed from it. But on the other hand, it doesn't run the show anymore. Can I be deeply Christian and not end up in states of severe hypomania? Well, that'll be a test of time, won't it? And so maybe this channel will be kind of a way to hold all of this and myself to account. Okay? Let's call it. God bless. We'll close this in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.